we got nowhere else, hopefully that each kid remembers that they got told that God loved them. So we'll stay there with that as a win. It was a hard concept to get to, so thank you guys for hanging in there. You guys did really well. We are continuing to work our way through the seasons of the church year, all right? And we are in a season that is known right now with the fancy name of Time After Pentecost. And it's even flashier title, Ordinary Time. This is our longest season of the church year, and will take us all the way to the end of November, Christ the King, and then the beginning of Advent. So we're in this for a while, folks. And you'll notice that the color for Ordinary Time is green. This is the color of new life and growth. And our gospel stories that we hear will be focused on stories and teachings by Jesus designed to challenge us, to stretch us, and to keep us growing in our faith both as individuals and as a church. And Jesus kicks us off with the first week with a really, really fantastic story. I love this first teaching. Lord, first let me go and bury my father. But Jesus said to him, let the dead bury their own dead. And another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say farewell to those at my home. Jesus says, no one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Anyone else feel like Jesus is being a bit harsh, a little unreasonable with these wannabe disciples? Anybody else in on that? Because I read this and I was like, really? And there's a great deal of debate and different ideas between biblical scholars about exactly what Jesus means with his demands. Some wonder if the father of the one guy who asked to bury him is even dead yet. All right, so sort of like the idea, hey, when my dad dies, it could be 20 years from now, then I'll follow you. So maybe the would-be follower is asking to put off discipleship for years. And the one who just wants to say goodbye to his family at home, is he trying to, delay, put things off as well? Because, we've all been there, right? How many of us have ever made excuses for things that we didn't want to do? Been there. Or are these sincere people who Jesus is unnecessarily demanding with? I think the only thing we can say with absolute certainty is that discipleship will challenge our priorities. We often think of Jesus' call, we often think of our life as Christians, making us choose between good and evil, right? Between doing the good thing and doing the wrong thing. Between God and the devil. Between vice or virtue. What I'm hearing in Jesus' words to us this morning is that sometimes God's call on our lives will cause us to have to choose between two good things. For example, today, where do we hear that Jesus has decided to head? Where is he going? Jerusalem, right? And we get a very specific description of Jesus' body language. We don't usually get that as he makes this choice. It says, Jesus set his face to go to Jerusalem. And I'm curious, just in your own mind, please don't share aloud, but I wonder what this looks like to you. What does it mean to hear that Jesus set his face? This doesn't sound to me like it's an easy decision for Jesus. Because we know what awaits Jesus in the capital city, and likely Jesus was all too aware of the outcome if he goes to Jerusalem. Jesus could remain in the north, right? Far away from the religious authorities and the Roman crosses. And Jesus could continue to do a lot of good, right? I mean, if we think about it, what are some things that he's doing in his ministry? He's healing the sick. He's feeding the hungry. He's even raising children back to life with their families, which are good things, godly things. Think of how many people Jesus could have helped if he just had put off that whole Jerusalem thing for another 5 years. And yet Jesus makes a hard choice and heads towards Jerusalem to confront his religious leaders and his political leaders. Jesus prioritizes defeating sin, oppression, and even death itself over the life and help that his ministry was bringing to the people of Galilee. Jesus chooses to go to the cross and his grave in order that all people might have life, and not just some people in one country or in one area or in one religion. Jesus prioritizes people, all people, rich people and poor people, young people and old people, gay people and straight people, Republicans and Democrats, Americans and Salvadorans, Christians and Muslims. I am God's priority. We are God's priority. The world is God's priority. And this is good news, folks. This is gospel. You are loved. You are forgiven. You are saved. And nothing can ever change God's priority about your life. And yet, along with comfort and hope, Jesus' life given for you and me also brings with it a challenge. How will you, how will I, how will we, how will the church live in light of the gift Christ has given us? How will the cross shape our priorities? Our lives are full of choices, right? Every moment we're making choices. Our path is identified by the things that we treasure, the priorities that we set, how we spend our time and money, and how we treat others. There's a story about a guy one time, and this isn't solid Lutheran theology here, but I think it's a good story. There was a guy one time who an evangelist came to his door and said, you know, "Are you saved?" And the guy started writing down names, numbers, and addresses. The guy said, "What are you doing?" He said, "These are my friends and family." He said, "Ask them." He said, "I can tell you anything." How are our daily lives different because of the new life that Jesus has given us? And we will not face easy choices. Do I go to Sunday worship, or do I go to work so I can take care of the family God has entrusted me with? Do I vote for the candidate whose policies are best for our economic interests? Or do I vote for the candidate who seeks to treat all people in a moral manner? Do I work as much as possible in order to pay for college so that I'm not buried in student loan debt? Or do I take time to volunteer in my community or go on vacation with my family? I read these to my wife before. She's always my first editor. And she said, "So what is the answer?" I said, "It's hard." I said, "Those are all good things, right? Those are all important things." And I would imagine that sometimes it is important to choose to go to church. And other times it is important to go to work. And likewise. And yet we are faced with those choices all the time of, how do I balance my priorities? How does the cross shape my decisions? The path of discipleship is often one where we are faced with choosing between multiple good options. Or, also, we're challenged with trying to find the least bad option sometimes, right? Going back to our politics question. Perhaps Jesus' difficult teachings today remind us that discipleship will not be simple nor easy. Nor will we always make the right decision, right? How many of us have made the wrong decision recently? Today. All right. We get a brief story this morning about two of Jesus' disciples, James and John. When a town fails to provide hospitality to travelers, the brothers want to burn the inhabitants alive with fire from heaven. And these are two of Jesus' inner circle, all right? These are guys that are not recent recruits, right? They've been with Jesus since the beginning, and still these followers fail and want to dole out revenge and violence. Jesus responds by rebuking. And Erica says, again, she asked me, so is this like, no guys, you got it wrong? It's a little stronger than that. Rebuke is the word that Jesus uses when he calls demons out of people. So this is a pretty strong rejection of their vengeful, violent request. And yet, when they get it wrong, when they mess up, when they say the wrong thing, even though they want to kill people, Jesus doesn't kick them out. He doesn't drop them from the roster. He doesn't demote them to the minors. And the same is true for you, for me, and for the church. We will fail, people of God. We will make mistakes. We will prioritize poorly. And yet Jesus continues to set his face towards Jerusalem. Jesus continues to set his face towards the cross, our sin, and anything that seeks to separate us from the love of God. Just like James and John, we too are called to try again. To try again to love our God, to try again to love ourselves, and to try again to love our neighbors. Thanks be to God and amen.